Hello, you're watching Telesur. This is From the South, from our studios in Caracas, Venezuela. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Let's begin. Our top story is Brazil, where police will investigate massive amounts of disinformation circulating on social media. This just a week ahead of the presidential runoff. The Supreme Electoral Court will hold a meeting with agencies in charge of detecting fake news on Monday. But in spite of this, the court has confirmed there were no irregularities in the first round of elections. Members of the court have defended the electronic voting system and rejected the claims of electoral fraud made by Jair Bolsonaro's supporters.
In relation to the alleged crimes, the main ones were contracting illegal advertisements, the spread of fake information to sway election results, and vote buying. These are the crimes that are being investigated by the federal police.
Meanwhile, hundreds of supporters of far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro have taken to the streets of Sao Paulo. These demonstrations follow protests led by women across the world against him on Saturday. In Sao Paulo alone, over 40,000 people marched against the rise of the far right.
People from over 100 cities in Brazil and across the world rose to say no to Jair Bolsonaro. They support Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad as part of a call to action by women's groups to prevent the return of a military dictatorship.
I escaped Brazil during the years of the dictatorship. It's horrible to even consider that the people might elect a fascist leader to power.
Chauvinism, fascism, homophobia and racism were all condemned by demonstrators. They're also against Bolsonaro's economic plan that calls for the privatization of all of Brazil's industries.
I took to the street today to defend my own job and to stop a major crime against our nation, to stop the privatization of Petrobras and the inhumanity that a Bolsonaro government represents.
These demonstrations took place just days after news broke out about the Social Liberal Party's alleged illegal financing of fake news against the Workers' Party.
Fake news are nothing new. It's how lies are spread. But the digital age has made them that much more dangerous. Many of us are just realizing the absurdity of this situation. This is unprecedented in human history, the way the worst of the worst are rising to power, but many can see what's going on. What's interesting is that those who are seeing through the veil are rising in numbers. We're going through some turbulence, but this will pass.
During the day of protests, Haddad appeared in Fortaleza with nearly 50,000 people welcoming him. On October the 28th, Brazil will go to the polls once more, and the result will echo across the world.
We move to Mexico now. The caravan of Honduran migrants which crossed into the country continue their risky path towards the U.S. border. Thousands are currently walking from Ciudad Hidalgo towards Tapachula in the state of Chiapas. On Saturday, Mexican authorities allowed more than 600 migrants in, but thousands more crossed through a river by swimming or on handmade rafts. This caravan of migrants started over a week ago, as thousands have fled due to poverty and violence. Some have rejected the claims by the Honduran president that the caravan is an attempt to destabilize the government.
We decided to join those who were going. This is not political. This comes from hunger, from the drought. It's for prosperity, for a better life. This is not political.
We are suffering for our families, for our children. They force our children to war in gangs. They kill our kids if we don't obey it.
And while the caravan continues to head north, more Hondurans want to join it. Our correspondent in Tegucigalpa, Gilda Silvestrucci, tells us more.
The migrant caravan keeps organizing throughout the country. People is calling from different spots to gather all together towards the border and to reach the big caravan in Mexico. Many Hondurans say they have no fear related to the government's threats and restrictions. The situation in Honduras is so severe that people prefer to live in large groups rather than remaining in the country. Meanwhile, the government continues saying that about 2,000 people will be returned.
That was our correspondent, Gilda Silvestrucci. And once again, U.S. President Donald Trump has spoken out against the caravan. He wrote on Twitter that, quote, full efforts are being made to stop the onslaught of illegal aliens from crossing our southern border. People have to apply for asylum in Mexico first, and if they fail to do that, the U.S. will turn them away. Previously, President Trump had threatened to cut all aid to countries in the region if the caravan wasn't stopped. Mexican police did briefly stop this caravan. Authorities said they are trying to keep them safe and moving in an orderly manner inside Mexican territory. Many believe they could be detained or deported. Still in Mexico, a guard has died in the capital during a shooting at the home of retired Cardinal Norberto Rivera Carrera. According to local media, at least 3 men were involved in the attack. Authorities believe the group wanted to rob the house. Rivera has been an influential figure in the Catholic Church for years, but has been accused of alleged cover-up of sexual abuse cases. He was inside the house but was not harmed. We have more stories coming up, but let's keep in touch. Follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and my account at Carla G. Telesur. We'll be back. Welcome back. Chile's Catholic Church will have to pay a compensation to 3 victims of sexual abuse. James Hamilton, Juan Carlos Cruz, and José Andrés Murillo will receive nearly $700,000. They were victims of priest Fernando Caradima. In a public statement, they said they are happy about the decision, but they highlight that it must open a path towards the end of impunity in these cases. Colombia's Constitutional Court has said that women requesting a legal abortion won't have a time limit to seek the procedure. More on this decision in this report.
Women gathered at the Bolivar Plaza to celebrate the court's rejection of time limits on abortion.
We are celebrating because this stops any move to legalize abortion under limited circumstances. Under the 2006 ruling, access to legal abortion must have been provided in 3 circumstances: when the health or the life of a woman is threatened, when a fetus is non-viable, or when a pregnancy is the result of rape. Now, the new court ruling is a very positive step. The court showed maturity and wisdom.
The question had initially been brought before the court by Judge Cristina Pardo, who argued that a fetus is viable at 24 weeks and should therefore be afforded the rights of any natural human.
The Constitutional Court is giving Congress the chance to regulate the number of weeks in which a woman can access an abortion.
Even though they've won the legal battle, they say the war for abortion decriminalization continues.
This is how society should see abortion as a crime. It is a crime that brings only negative outcomes for women and, by extension, society. This is because women are risking their lives. It only serves to deepen social inequalities because students and indigenous women are the ones who are putting their lives at risk. They often make uninformed decisions.
Meanwhile, opposition congressmen have affirmed that they will defend women's rights above religious beliefs.
We will uphold the court that defends women's right of access to abortion, and we will keep fighting. We maintain our stance on the decriminalization of abortion.
Now they are urging the Congress to decide whether the time for women to pursue a termination of pregnancy will be limited or not.
Heavy rainfalls in Nicaragua have caused new landslides, killing 4 and raising the death toll to 20 people in the last 2 weeks. Authorities have declared a state of emergency in 6 municipalities and capital Managua. The rest of the country remains under a weather alert. And the rains have also left victims in Colombia, where at least 9 people, including 5 children, have been killed in the city of Barranca Bermeja in the eastern department of Santander. The rains caused a landslide in Colombia that buried 3 homes. Local residents tried to help unearthing some of the bodies. Landslides are not uncommon in Colombia's mountain regions, especially in areas where informal homes are being built next to deforested areas. Hundreds of homes in Trinidad and Tobago were also affected by the showers. Prime Minister Keith Rowley has declared a national disaster. There are no reports of deaths so far, only of minor injuries. Many residents had to be rescued from their roofs by neighbors in private boats. A group of 93 Venezuelans have returned to their country from Ecuador. The group was accompanied by former Venezuelan Ambassador Carol Delgado on their flight home. The ambassador was recently expelled from the country in a show of rising diplomatic tensions between both nations. This is the 7th flight that has left Ecuador under the return to the homeland plan.
They have returned home, a place that now has a brighter future for them than when they left. These migrants have left a life of being victims of racism.
Venezuelans over there don't have any support from the Ecuadorian government. The visa process is not equal for all. People from Colombia have an easier time with the process. We are charged nearly $300 for an appointment that usually takes 6 months. Venezuelans in Ecuador have no advantages.
Cases like this are common for migrants. They're influenced by social media campaigns that promise a better life full of opportunities. They left thinking they would be accepted.
Once there, we realized things are not as they portrayed. There is so much xenophobia, not by everyone, but by enough people. There is no work. I thank God we were able to come back.
Despite the bad experiences, they're enthusiastic about the future. Rejection isn't just limited to migrants. The Venezuelan ambassador to Ecuador was expelled from the country, a move initiated by the right wing.
What they are trying to do is create an image of a Venezuela that is subhuman so they can attack it without consequence, so they can try and strip our sovereignty. They want it to look like Venezuela has no respect for human rights and justify an intervention. This is awful and we must stop it.
The duality of the government and the media to promote solidarity and show concern for Venezuelans have proven to be a ruse. Once they're on the shores, migrants have relayed stories of abuse and exploitation. The Bolivarian government is going the extra mile to bring them back home by air and land.
Julian Assange, who has been living under asylum in Ecuador's embassy in London for the last 6 years, is suing the government of Ecuador. This for alleged violations of his rights. Ecuador released a new protocol which requires the WikiLeaks founder to pay for medical bills and phone calls, among other utilities. Assange's lawyer, Baltasar Garzón, says his client was not consulted on these new rules. Still in Ecuador, former Vice President Jorge Glass has been transferred to a prison in the Andean city of Latacunga. Via Twitter, Glass' lawyer said this is a political revenge against the former vice president who was detained in Quito and denounced that his security won't be guaranteed. Glass was sentenced to 6 years in prison for allegedly receiving illicit payments from Brazilian construction giant Odebrecht. In Argentina, members of the cultural arts fraternity are rejecting the government of Mauricio Macri and its proposed budget cut for the sector in 2019.
Artists, cultural practitioners, students and other supporters of the arts took to the streets under the slogan of #SaveTheCulture.
Next year's proposed budget slash will have serious repercussions. It could result in a termination of several art programs. The symphony orchestra, museums, and even institutions such as the University of Arts are at risk.
Organizers warned that the Macri government's restructuring plan will also affect national festivals, fairs, and regional parties.
We are like a prolific seed that can spread to others. I always say an actor can give full expression to the voiceless. So if that is possible, it's great. Now this proposed budget cut will create a void, one that we can no longer fill with our amplified voices.
Actors and musicians say this is a direct attack on culture by the Macri government.
We don't deserve this. We didn't choose this, and we certainly don't want to see all these critical cultural organizations go under. The National Theatre Institute and the National Arts Fund are at risk.
Deputies from the Victory Front are also lending artists and musicians their support. Members say they are going to vote against the budget presented by Macri's administrations. This as they reject the action being taken by the government.
Clearly, they are trying to difficult in popular sectors the access to cultural goods. And on the other side, that only the sectors funded by the market are able to produce cultural acts. Then everything will be capitalized.
Protesters announced that they will be back at the National Congress. They will be alongside the Workers' Union, the General Confederation of Workers, and more groups. The budget will be discussed in the Argentinian parliament.
Now to sports. The 2019 Copa America official draw will take place on January 24th in Rio de Janeiro. Brazil will be hosting the 46th edition of the Football Cup next summer. 10 national teams from South America and 2 guest teams, Qatar and Japan, will compete in this tournament as well. We'll take one last short break, but stay with us. We'll return after this video. Welcome back. Rebels have killed at least 11 people and abducted 15 others, including 10 children, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. According to military sources, the attack was carried out by fighters of the Allied Democratic Forces. Spokesman for the UN peacekeeping mission in the DRC said the peacekeepers had been in a crossfire with suspected rebels near the border with Uganda.
We have only one concern, that the Congolese soldiers and blue helmets leave this region. There is a lot of disorder. If we have another group that will help us, no matter where they come from, as long as we are secured. May our soldiers leave us alone, we no longer need them.
At least 55 people have been killed in Nigeria's northern Kaduna state after a fight broke out between Muslim and Christian youths. Police have arrested 22 people in connection to the clashes. Hundreds of people have been killed this year, and security has become a key campaign issue ahead of the elections in February 2019. Hundreds of people have marched through the capital of Guinea-Bissau, demanding transparency in the electoral census for the coming legislative elections. The census, which was scheduled to begin on August 23rd and last for 1 month, was postponed due to delays in the delivery of electronic equipment from Nigeria. According to the government, the census aims to register nearly 1 million voters, out of a population of about 1.7 million. The country's legislative elections are set for November 18th.
All we're calling for is total respect of the law, the census law, electoral law, but especially the rights of citizens.
In South Africa, protesters have forced the closure of a church where a pastor faces charges of raping dozens of women. Members of the African National Congress and the opposition economic freedom fighters gathered outside the church, demanding that it be shut down. Pastor Timothy Omotoso is currently on trial for child grooming and raping about 30 teenage girls. A Tanzanian businessman who was kidnapped earlier this month has been freed and reunited with his family. In a tweet, Mohamed Dewji, called the youngest billionaire in Africa, has confirmed his release. The kidnappers had freed him and dumped him in a field. It's not clear if a ransom was paid. He had been kidnapped outside a hotel in the city of Dar es Salaam.
It was around 2:30 a.m. when I received a call from Mo himself saying he is free and safe. So we had to go and pick him up. Due to the fact that our family was overwhelmed with the good news, we had to go straight to pick him up in Winkana grounds, forgetting to inform the police security. But above all, Dewji is back, safe, and he is doing fine.
Afghanistan's parliamentary elections this Sunday are raising doubts over the credibility of the results. Over 250 polling stations have problems using the biometric verification devices. Critics say officials have downplayed violence related to this election. According to the news agency AFP, the number of people killed and wounded in connection to the polls is nearly 300. Around 4 million people voted in this election.
So it's early that we judge about all the aspects of the process. Of course, the mismanagement and lack of preparation was worse than the previous election.
The Israeli government has reopened its border crossings with Gaza 4 days after closing them. The Israeli government had closed the Kerem Shalom goods crossing and the Erez crossing. This follows months of violence in the area and restriction of trade.
The closure of the Karam Abu Salem crossing causes the shortage of some goods and merchandise, mainly petroleum products that come daily and according to daily needs.
A train derailed in Taiwan, killing 22 people. Here's more on that and other news from around the world.
A fatal train accident has killed 18 people and injured 175 in Taiwan. Authorities have described it as one of the worst rail disasters in more than 3 decades. Hundreds of rescue workers and soldiers work through the wreckage, searching for survivors. All passengers have reportedly been removed. So far, the cause of the crash is unknown. Indian police have clashed with angry protesters near the site of a railway accident that killed at least 61 people. The police were pelted with stones. Demonstrators are demanding financial compensation for the families who lost relatives and breadwinners. On Friday, in the city of Amritsar, a train drove through a crowd watching a fireworks display for a Hindu festival. People blame the authorities for not diverting the train ahead of the celebrations.
The government had declared there would be free treatment for the injured, but yesterday I went to the hospital in the evening and the injured were being thrown out and money was being demanded.
A protest in Paris has taken place to denounce assaults on the LGBT community after a series of high-profile incidents. Gay actor Guillaume Melané was left with a broken nose after he was punched in the face by unknown assailants on Tuesday. He and his friend were attacked in the city's gay neighbourhood when they made their way back from dinner. Although figures of reported attacks are down, NGOs are urging the French government to launch a national anti-homophobia campaign and to teach police officers how to deal with victims.
It's not fun to show yourself in that state. It's not fun to take a photo of yourself at that moment. Because you've just been assaulted, you're covered in blood, you're shaken, you're in a state of shock. But I took the photo in the ambulance because I said to myself, take a photo of yourself. Take a photo of yourself. You did nothing wrong, you were on your way home, and look at the state you're in now. Why? I didn't steal anything, I didn't insult anyone, I didn't attack anyone, I'm just homosexual.
Hundreds of people have taken to the streets in a pacifist march in Washington, D.C. They have gathered outside the Pentagon to protest U.S. military actions overseas. They say political parties in the country receive money from the war business. They denounce that the U.S. economy is based on killing people.
No justice! No peace! No justice!
October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, aimed at increasing early detection and treatment. On average, 1 out of 8 women is prone to developing this kind of cancer.
According to the World Health Organization, breast cancer is by far the most common cancer in women worldwide, in both developed and developing countries. There are about 1.38 million new cases and 458,000 deaths from breast cancer each year. Incidence rates vary greatly worldwide and are increasing in developed countries because of increased life expectancy, urbanization, and a more Western way of life. 16% of women have or have had breast cancer. The best way for women to prevent it is to carry out regular self-examination, where they need to look for change in skin, malformation, and pain in the nipples. Experts say these simple tips can help women detect breast cancer symptoms early, before it becomes life-threatening.
And a health recommendation before we end this news brief. But this and other stories, you can find them on our website. We are at telesurtv.net/English. Here you can find all our latest information, as you know, so go check it out. And you can also follow us on social media. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and until next time, thank you for watching Telesur, connecting the Global South.